Hello everyone, welcome to the series on the history of English literature. And this video is the fifth part on interwar years, and we discuss Surrealism in English poetry. Introduction. Any account of interwar literary development has to admit its own limits. The period 1918 to 1939 was not a neat sequence of movements but a restless, overlapping field of styles, ideologies and experiments. Even when modernism and political poetry appeared to dominate the narrative, other short-lived schools emerged, often responding to the same pressures: war trauma, social instability, and a growing sense that ordinary realist language could not fully represent modern experience. In this broader context, it becomes necessary to glance at Surrealism, a movement that briefly entered English literary culture around 1930. What Surrealism offered: escape, dream, and the unconscious. Surrealism, already powerful on the European continent in both literature and visual art, provided an imaginative route away from the rational, orderly world that seemed to have failed so catastrophically. Its emphasis on dream logic, unexpected associations, and the irrational gave writers a way to express experiences that felt psychologically distorted or socially absurd. In a decade defined by anxiety, economic depression, ideological conflict, and looming war, Surrealism functioned as a form of escape, but not simply escapism in the shallow sense. It offered a method for representing what ordinary realism struggled to capture: the mind's hidden pressures, the strange workings of desire, fear, and fantasy, and the fragmented textures of modern life. Surrealism in Britain: limited, brief, and selective. When Surrealism arrived in Britain around 1930, its literary influence remained limited and short-lived. Unlike the continent, where Surrealism became a major artistic force, English literary culture gave it only partial space. Several factors contributed to this: a strong English tradition of irony, restraint, and realism; competing interwar priorities, especially social realism and politically committed poetry; the dominance of other modernist modes that already used fragmentation and symbolism without fully embracing surrealist techniques. Thus, Surrealism in England did not become a defining mainstream movement. It appeared more as a momentary flair than a sustained school. Sir Herbert Reed, the principal established advocate. Among major established writers, the only significant and consistent advocate of Surrealism was Sir Herbert Reed, 1893 to 1968. Reed's importance lies not merely in poetic practice, but his wider role as a critic and intellectual who could articulate Surrealism's artistic value and defend its methods. Reed helped to legitimize Surrealism within English cultural debate by presenting it as more than mere eccentricity. For him, Surrealism offered a disciplined artistic strategy, one that could explore psychic depth and challenge complacent rationalism. Yet, even Reed's advocacy could not secure Surrealism a dominant position within English poetry, partly because the English literary public was often suspicious of what seemed excessively irrational or foreign. The appeal to young English poets, a way out of contemporary pressure. Although Surrealism did not take deep institutional root in Britain, it carried real attraction for younger poets, especially those exhausted by mental strain of modern political and moral conflicts. The decade forced poets to confront large-scale crises, class suffering, fascism, ideological struggle, and not everyone wished to meet these pressures through direct political statement. For such writers, Surrealism promised release from the demand for solutions in poetry, freedom to pursue imagination over argument, a language of shock, dream, and symbolic leaps rather than rational explanation, an artistic refuge from the complex problems of contemporary life. In this sense, Surrealism acted as a psychological alternative to the overt moral urgency of 1930s political verse. While Auden's circle often tried to diagnose society through Marx and Freud, Surrealist poets sometimes sought refuge in the mind's free play, fantasy as resistance, not program. Conclusion: Surrealism in the interwar England was neither dominant nor long-lasting. Yet its brief appearance around 1930 remains significant because it reveals how diverse and emotionally pressured the poetic field had become. Even limited and selective influence can matter. Surrealism supplied English poets with a temporary vocabulary of escape, dream, and non-rational experience, reflecting a desire to step outside the burdens of contemporary history. In a period marked by instability, Surrealism offered not a solution but a different kind of survival, an imaginative refusal to let rational crisis language become the only possible poetic mode. So, this was the discussion on the Surrealism in English poetry during interwar years. We will meet in the next video and discuss some other topic. Until then, goodbye and thank you.